How do?
All right, Sam.
All right. What did they say in Bury?
In Bury?
Yeah. I'm in Lancashire now, guys, right? Not Yorkshire. The reason I've just started this, we were talking and I've dropped it on her because this is Clara. She was super nervous. Yeah. She's going to tell her family's story, her brother's story. We're not sure where it'll go. She's very scatty like me. She has got some Irish in her, so I'm going to be careful. You can see the Irish. I could see the Irish anyway. You're not as nervous now, are you?
No, I feel all right now.
Yeah,
I do. We had a chat.
Something we've talked about here, and I'm going to mention this, right? Like Sherry, you've already met, Clara has campaigned. They're not just campaigning for their siblings. You know, all the lads and lasses who are on IPP, they're all different. Every story's different. She don't know, I'm gonna drop this on her as well, but I'm gonna ask her about her own personal journey because it's taking its toll. Injustice does, especially when it's one of your family members. But I think a thing that is really, really important to mention is media involvement in things. And I myself know, you know, I've been interviewed for an hour and there's a minute on the news. Now, it's not about being out there, but you want to tell your story, don't they? And all media outlets tend to have an agenda.
Yeah.
Whereas my channel, you can say it how it is. It will not be edited. So we'll get straight into it. Where would you like to start, young lady? Do you think? I'll help you, shall I? I think a good place to start, remember when we had a conversation last week, and I think you might have been on a visit with your brother. He told you he'd got 99 years to serve, and you'd sort of thought he was taking a piss.
Yeah.
You thought he actually, what did your tariff get? Did your brother get?
2 years.
Got 2 years. Again, a little reminder, a tariff is a recommended sentence. So he got 2 years, which on a normal sentence, not an IPP, would mean serving 12 months and then getting out on licence. But your brother told you he got 99 years, so away you go.
So it was actually in 2012, Sam.
Yep.
He was given 99 years IPP.
Yep.
Sentence for street robbery of a mobile phone, and he pleaded guilty. He didn't go to trial or anything like that. Whatever the police said he did, you know, he threw his hands in and he pleaded guilty. He was really drunk. He was in the city centre of Manchester. Well, actually, it was the outskirts of the city centre of Manchester, and met up with two. There was actually missionaries, 2 men, and they'd come over here to spread the gospel from California.
Yep.
And how ironic is this? And you know, my brother's Christian, I'm Christian, we're all a Christian family, and he ends up stealing a phone off these two men who was here just to spread the gospel.
It was non-violent.
There was no violence in the street robbery, and there was no weapon used. He actually told them his name. That's how drunk my brother was.
Yep.
He told them his name. He hugged one of them.
Yep.
Gave his apologies, and kissed the other one on the forehead, and showed them all his tattoos. He was really drunk, so it wasn't actually hard to find my brother because the missionary they had his name. The missionaries they knew everything about him. They could identify every tattoo that was on him. because he was showing him
Yep.
all these tattoos, and I think he was really, really embarrassed when he seen the police statements, and he'd sobered up in the police cells.
Yep.
So he didn't actually tell any of the family when he was being sentenced, because of the embarrassment of the street robbery. So he started his sentence off in Strangeways, in Strangeways Prison, where you worked.
Yeah.
And
Allegedly.
yeah. And so this was in the year 2012.
I wonder whether we cross paths.
You may be. Yeah. I think he said it. He does know who he remembers who you are from your book.
What did he say? I know that handsome, good-looking, charming officer. Why are you laughing?
No, he said, what did he say to me when I said that I was doing an interview with you? He said, yeah, I know who he is. He did them books, and he's an author of a couple of books, and yeah, that was yesterday. So yeah, he starts his sentence in Strangeways. At the time, I was doing a training for the Manchester's 10K.
Well, yeah. Are you a runner? I didn't know that.
I was. I did. We used to run. So I was doing a lot of training for the Manchester's 10K. So where I was living at the time wasn't that far from Strangeways. At first, when I'd found out that he'd gone to prison, and our family were frustrated, were annoyed, especially at what he'd done.
Yeah.
To these missionaries, and took the phone, and they was only here really to help people encounter and live a life of faith, and so we was really annoyed and embarrassed as well as a Christian family as well, thinking, how can he do that, so I booked a visit. I'd gone to see him at Strangeways. I took some.
How was that for you? Had you been to prison before?
He'd been to prison before, yeah. He'd been to prison, Sam, for minor crimes. I think even if we was to add all his crimes, minor crimes together, it still wouldn't warrant that he could potentially die in prison on 99 year sentence. Yep. So IPP, I didn't know much about it at the time. I'd heard it on the street, this sentence, say this IPP. Never really interrupted my life, IPP, and I'd never really thought I'd ever look into IPP. I didn't really know much about it. So I'd gone to see him and taken him clothes and stuff at Strangeways, and I'd asked him, how long did you get for this street robbery? And he said, I got life. I got 99 years. To be honest, Sam, I thought, now that's manipulative. I thought, how dare he manipulate us to make us feel sorry for him?
Yeah.
This is what I thought. I was like, Thomas, you couldn't have got
99 years for a non-violent street robbery.
Yeah.
For a 2-year tariff.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. I thought this.
How long did it take you to get an understanding of what it was and actively decide you were going to try and do something about it?
A few years. So next month, on the 23rd of February next month, he's been locked up for 11 years next month, dead on 11 years.
So how long have you been campaigning?
About 4 years. I think as the years were starting to go by through his 11-year sentence, I definitely thought he was messing about in prison. I thought, he's messing about. He's not getting his parole.
Yeah.
he's clearly doing something.
Yep.
And I was guilty of going to see him. Sometimes I'd just go and see him just to go mad at him and say, you know, look what you're putting my mum through. And,
Get your head down, sort your head out and get out.
And yeah, I'd end up going completely mad at him at times and saying to him, like, oh no, it's not probation. It's not the parole board. It's not your private officer. It's not this. It's not that. This is you. You know.
Do you understand now why they don't get out on parole?
Yeah.
They don't have to be badly behaved, do they?
No.
It's because somebody has to sign off on a sentence that was abolished in 2012 that is about risk management.
Yeah.
And that's it, isn't it?
Yeah. This is some stuff that I'd said to him through his sentence. You know, I can't really take back. Once stuff had come out of my mouth and I'd gone mad at him, I was really blaming himself. Like, you know, I thought,
don't beat yourself up over that. I've no doubt you have.
yeah.
If people do not understand love. I remember the first person, again, sorry if I'm repeating myself, who brought me the paperwork, said, Mr. Samworth, I got an 18-month sentence. I've got my paperwork. It says I've got 99 years. You know, please sort this out. Went to the SO. He didn't understand. Phoned up. They didn't really understand upstairs, where they did the calculations and produced the paperwork. Yeah.
It's I don't think, Sam, anybody was really understanding the IPP sentence. Campaigners, myself and other campaigners, have all had to really educate themselves.
I said I'd lead you a little bit. I'm interested because you'll know this. I don't. Ken Clark was the
Justice Secretary
in 2012, was he?
He had it, yeah.
Why did it get abolished?
It was, I think it was deemed, it was inhumane sentence to give somebody 99 years.
Where did that come from?
For a crime.
You know, where was it? You know, did someone challenge it? Was it Court of Human Rights?
Yeah, it was.
You know, where did the quashing of it and someone decide that it was inhumane?
It was the European Courts of Human Rights that had decided that it was.
And did the British justice system, i.e. Ken Clark, because obviously he's only the head of it, he's not responsible for it, decide that, you know, they took it under advice, or did they challenge it, or did they agree and just say, yeah, this is wrong, we're doing away with it?
Yeah, so Ken Clark did have quite a lot to do with it, and then yeah, it was either abolished by the European Courts of Human Rights, and it was
excuse you,
sorry,
you're welcome,
it was taken from I believe from the Book of Statutes, our Book of Statutes, like the European Court of Human Rights book. It was no longer in the Book of Statutes anymore, IPP, because it was abolished. But it wasn't abolished retrospectively for those
serving
still in prison. It was, the sentence was abolished and never to be used again in this country, but not abolished for the ones that was in prison.
Why do you think there are lads and lasses now who are way over tariff, still stuck in prison? You know, what's the reason? Why is your brother still stuck in after 11 years? Why is Sherry brother done 19 years?
19 years.
Not why he can't get out, because I know quite definitely the slightest little thing, parole boards don't even need anything. They just send a letter saying you're not successful. They don't need reasoning. You know, it can be anything. why are they still in?
There was, in my brother's case, Sam, he was sent to prisons that didn't have progressive programs. There was.
You are giving some of the reasons why they stuck. It's because no one cares, do they?
No, I think
Justice secretaries. How many justice secretaries have we had since Ken Clark?
probably 10.
They don't care, do they?
No,
They
not.
put in jobs like the Minister for Prisons. You know, they put in jobs for a short period of time. What are you going to do in 12 months? They make all these promises, and then they're gone, aren't they?
They don't.
No one cares.
They don't stay
No,
around
no
long
one.
enough.
Dominic Raab's in a position now where he could have quashed this last year, couldn't
Yeah.
he? Could have said, right, all these IPP prisoners, let's have a look at getting them out. What do we need to do? Could have got everyone on board, probation, parole, you know, and looked at the whole thing. No, he's thrown it back to the parole boards and that, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's. Well, we're hearing Dominic Raab could be resigning. I don't know. Like, he could be.
Will the problem go away when somebody else comes to the head, or as you know, the drive from families got enough momentum, so if he goes and somebody else is appointed, they're going to have to follow it through now? They're going to have to say yay or nay, because that's what you want, isn't it? You want someone to say, right, we're going to deal with it or not, and then you've got to take it to a higher authority. Is that right?
Yeah. If I think the problem, what's happened, we've had that many justice secretaries. No one stays around long enough.
Correct.
To we always have a reshuffle.
Yep.
So we get a new government and we're appointed a new justice secretary, and
Not to do with me.
yeah,
That's what it is.
It's no, yeah. I think we watched mine and Thomas's MP speak with Dominic Raab, and one of the first things he does is completely shifts any kind of blame. He was like, you know, I'm stuck with a sentence that I didn't
You were
implement.
physically there watching this.
No, I was watching it on what did I watch it on? I think it might have been the parliamentary channel.
Okay.
Or something. I was watching mine and Thomas's MP question Dominic Raab, and he was like, "Well, you know, I'm stuck with a sentence that I didn't implement, but you're the man who can."
You're
like,
in charge. You're in charge of the prison, and whatever's there, you're in charge, aren't you?
Yeah.
They need to be made responsible. These people, don't they?
To be definitely some. Nobody wants. None of the justice secretaries wants to take any kind of responsibility of what's happened.
There's a thing around this for me, yeah. I'm not talking about individual miscarriages of justice, of which there are a lot, but the IPP sentence. You know, the amount of people who are no longer here. Died, being recalled to prison, people who've never been released from prison, is probably the biggest miscarriage of justice in, I don't know, the last 50 years or something like that, isn't it? Well, when it all comes to a head and people understand, it shows our criminal justice system to be a complete shambles. I'm going to come back to you now. Norwich Prison. So Norwich Prison had nothing in place. Just to explain that. So your brother's obviously ended up at Norwich Prison.
Yeah. In 2016, he was transferred from HMP Swaleside.
Yep.
And he was then transferred to HMP Norwich.
Why?
They would just say security reasons. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all you'd get.
Yeah.
Security reasons. So, I think we was in hope that Norwich Prison maybe had a progressive program for IPPs.
What's that mean?
They have to do programs to show that they are now changed, rehabilitated, that,
Wash your mouth out saying that word, rehabilitated.
yeah.
But I'll allow you to say it. I know what you mean, and people understand what you mean. The programs are bullshit, aren't they? I can tell you that I know programs. I know people who've delivered programs for 20 years. I've seen documentaries from people who are way more educated, certainly than me, probably not you. The British system of programs, it's all based on the same bullshit. They don't do anything, they don't solve problems. Taking a domestic violence course doesn't mean you're not going to be perpetrating domestic violence when you get out. Enhanced thinking skills. Have you heard of that course?
Yeah, I've heard.
Let me tell you about that course, shall I? Every prisoner will have been on that, and then they get put on it on every sentence. And do you know what they all say? Yeah, they say it made me a better criminal, so they don't send them on it again. That's what they say. The enhanced thinking skills, ETS, made me a better criminal. The programs are bullshit. You know, it's clouding an issue. I've seen lads, IPP lads, every course under the planet, enhanced prisoner, which means they are a model prisoner, still can't get out.
Yeah.
It's down to the parole boards and probation. And prisons, being in the wrong prisons. Prisons moving people about. How many moves has your brother had?
16.
In how many years?
11 years.
Why? Is he security risk? Is he assaulting staff? You know, is he setting cells on fire?
No.
Is he protesting, dirty protesting, smashing cells?
No.
No, there's
He
no
wasn't.
reason. There's no. I'll tell you what. These IPP prisons now, not when I was in. I didn't know what it were. People didn't know what it were. They're becoming problematic for people now because there is some focus from the public. People like yourself who are doing an excellent job. We're coming back to you on how it's destroyed you. That's not overstating it. Yeah?
Yeah.
You haven't got a choice
I
now.
don't.
I've said that, have you? It's highlighting it, and what a lot of people, a lot of prisoners who have been in a system, are stuck in a system. They know the rules. They know the regulations. They don't tolerate shite. You know, if they're getting moved or need you to move here or something, they're going to protest. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be violent or whatever. But, you know, Norwich Prison didn't have the facilities to deal with IPP prisoners. They couldn't make a progress, could they? There were no courses.
There was. He languished in Norwich, Sam, for 2 years. It was just an absolute waste of 2 years, really. He was transferred from Swales.
Which technically should have been the length of his sentence.
Yeah. He could have been getting a chunk of his sentence out of the way, but it was just a waste of time and 2 years of his life. Norwich Prison. We knew. We'd got involved in another journalist, and he was absolutely, he was amazing, and he did a load of research for us. And I remember I'd spoken to him on the phone, and he said, Clara, Thomas spent 2 years in Norwich. He said from the day IPP was rolled out, there was never a progressive program in that prison in HMP Norwich.
And there were loads of other prisons that had no progressive programs either.
And loads of, If Sam, what would happen with Thomas if, say for instance, out of the 16, he was moved 16 times around the country.
Yep.
And say for instance, he did land at a prison that had a progressive program. He was never an enhanced prisoner. He was he was never at that stage where he even had capacity. He's becoming poor. He's becoming really, really poorly now.
Of course he will.
Really poorly.
Of course he will.
He didn't have capacity even to do courses.
Right, let me I know where you're going with this, so I'll tell you now. Inside information from probation and that, because I've got some good people who talk to me now.
Yeah.
So a sentence plan Oasis, right, with basically, it's to lower risk. If someone goes through a prison sentence and follows the plan, because that's what it is, a structure, yeah, it's supposed to lower risk. I've told you, you know, the things that lower risk are having a family that love you and missing them, you know, and things like this. It's nothing to do with the work they do. However, the plan should be appropriate to that person. So, for instance, if we take Thomas, your brother, yeah, street robbery, yeah, there should be nothing to do with drugs that he has to complete, yeah, because he's not been involved in drugs. There should be nothing to do with domestic violence. They're two simple ones, nothing to do with that. Now, I would imagine, and I know from people that I've come across, a lot of these plans, yeah, are full of bullshit, because prison officers do them, and some of them are inappropriate. That plan can be challenged, and everything on that plan can be challenged, yeah. But the prisoners can do it themselves. I've had prisoners, Miss Samworth, look at this, I've not been involved with drugs, I've not been involved with violence, and we've challenged it. I've helped them. You know, I've said, right, okay, get a complaint form. I'll help you fill it in. You put my name in if you want. I spoke to Officer Samworth. Yeah, the comebacks from that were great, but you know what? If you're not going to do your job right. So I had a manager come from programs one day, one of the prisoners who was on healthcare. He says, what the fuck's this? Yeah? So what the fuck's that? I'm taking it, that's a complaint. Yeah, his Oasis report, his sentence plan's bullshit. Full of bullshit. Your officer has put him on every course going. A lot of them aren't appropriate, so deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to stick. All right, we'll take the complaint to the next level. Cut a long story short, the officer came over, kicking off, but he had to do a new one that was appropriate. Yeah.
Right.
I know now, because people contact me, that they've got loved ones in prison, yeah, and there's inappropriate sentence plans and Oasis reports. They started challenging them. But if you don't, you're stuck with it. So all these lads on IPP, where they're supposed to do this bullshit reports and courses and crap like that, it all needs looking at. As part of the whole thing, if you're going to re-sentence people and let them out, saying, oh, this lad hasn't done a drugs course or whatever, it needs looking at. Yeah, it seriously needs looking at, and it all needs challenging because it's been mismanaged.
Yeah. This is what...
Your brother, yeah, I'll tell you this now as well, a lad I know had a psychology report done before he went into prison. He did no coursework, he refused, he was a 10-year IPP. He got out on his first parole. He did no coursework, refused.
Nothing.
The psychologist who did the report when he went in said keeping him in damage him.
Yeah.
A separate, because the Ministry of Justice has to do a report as well as a counterbalance, said keeping him in will damage him. So if I was a psychologist seeing your brother now has been in 11 years for a 2-year tariff, yeah, he's going to be unwell, mentally unwell. He's not going to be capable of doing any coursework. He shouldn't have to do any. That report should say, you know, keeping this lad in any longer will do more harm than good. You need to get him out, and that is something that needs to be included when they decide how they're going to deal with it. So if they're going to re-sentence them and let them out, it needs to be appropriate, you know, and the licence conditions need to reflect that they've kept people in way over tariff, they're mentally unwell, disturbed, because they're going to struggle to cope. Yeah. So the licence conditions for me should be something like, so long as this person doesn't commit another criminal act, then that's it, they're out. And it needs to be a short licence as well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
I've been on my pedestal a little bit, but that's what I think, love. And I know it's wrong. So all these little bits, that needs, you know, somebody needs to say, and these reports and sentence plans and that, boom, do away with them. They've been in too long, they're way over tariff, get them out. Yeah.
What we'd started to see, I was mortified, to be honest, when I found out that he languished in Norwich prison for 2 years, and all he got out of that was a mental breakdown. Like, oh, that it was almost like it was a really abusive prison. It's a really, really abusive prison. He was abused in there physically, mentally, anything spiritually he grew up with and held on to. Spiritually he was broken, mentally and physically in Norwich. Every time he'd ring home, he was always in the seg. Always in the seg. It was unbelievable. Like, it was rare for him to be on a wing.
Why were they keeping him in the seg? What was the reasoning? You've got to have a reason to keep someone in segregation unit.
I think it was unmanageable. His mental health was really...
So someone who's mentally unwell, you manage him in a segregation unit, put them in solitary where they have no or very little human contact, very little time out of cell. That's a great way of managing them, isn't it? This is what we was piecing together as a family from home. We're in Manchester, he's in Norwich, and that's a long ass. Did you ever do that journey? That is a long way, that.
My mum did. She went, Sam. It was... Well, no, yeah, I don't think she...
Is this what we talked about?
Yeah.
We'll not talk about that. We don't need to. We might come back when everyone's in a better place and just go through that. Because I have my own thoughts on that.
Yeah, I actually don't mind going, speaking about that. And I'm just telling his story and my mum's and my own story. It's hard because I'm telling it through my mother's eyes and my brother's eyes, and I'm the only one who's able to tell this story. And I've watched my mum and I've watched my brother both become really ill.
Yeah.
And I've become ill at times. What was happening, Sam, in Norwich prison is his mental health. It wasn't, his behaviour wasn't becoming worse. His mental health was impacting worse and worse. So every time he was ringing home, we was getting a more of a broken man over that phone. He was so broken, Sam.
How is that? So, it's okay. So you're thinking, right, this is what you're thinking, yeah? You need to be there for him, but it'd be extremely upsetting.
How? Like, how? He was...
You're going to set me off.
Oh, sorry. He was... He was... I think probably the worst time for us was 2016. 2016 was a horrible time for about 2-3 years. And my brother was ringing home. Sam, he was talking in Roman numerals.
What do you mean by that?
To my mum. Do you know, he was talking in biblical...
Is it like some sort of horror film where someone's possessed type?
Yeah, it wasn't... This was not normal Christian believers. He'd always been brought up in faith.
Yeah.
We all had. We'd always been brought up and taught that if all else fails, you know, God is always there, and we all had that installed in us, and it probably one of the greatest gifts.
Downloaded.
Yeah, downloaded like that. Yeah, that was downloaded.
No, that's good.
Into us, but this wasn't the way my brother was talking. Wasn't healthy from the Bible. It wasn't coming from the Bible. It wasn't a healthy way, the way he was pursuing his faith. This was a lad who was becoming really, really sick, very, very sick on the phone. He was ringing home, and he was talking in these Roman numerals, just completely not making sense, and you're listening to it. My mum's listening to it, I'm listening to it, and months, it's going like this for months. And my mum said, I'm gonna have to go and see him. I have to go and see my son. And we said to, okay, we'll get you a hotel. We'll all club together and we'll get you a hotel, because it's such a far place, Norwich from Manchester. So she goes to Norwich. Say this is probably about 2017. She goes to Norwich, and she come back, and I asked how he was, and she was really quiet, and she just didn't see herself, and we was like, so how was the visit? And she said that she went into the visiting centre, booked in, gone through security, gone into the visits room. All the inmates was all set out on the tables, and other families was going over to their family members and meeting, greeting, and hugging and things like that. And she said everyone kind of seemed really settled, at their visitors' table. And she said, Clara, she said, I was just really looking around thinking, right, where's my son? And she said she seen an officer and gave his name and said, I'm here to see my son, but I can't find him. Like how embarrassed she felt. And the officer, he took her over to this, she said, this dishevelled lad who just looked like was served up on a plate. And the last time she seen her son, he was 6'4", weighing at a good healthy weight. We'd not seen him for quite a while.
Yeah.
Because that happens in the sentence becomes so long, people start getting on with their lives and things
it's
like
difficult,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And the distance
of what was going on. So the officer has taken my mum over to this table, to this lad. She said her guess would be that he weighed about 7 stone. She was estimating his weight because he was sat down. She had this estimating how much he weighed, and his hair was grown like past his elbows, and he's looking at the floor, and he's just staring at the floor. And she didn't know it was Thomas. She didn't know it was Thomas. She didn't even get any feeling that was a son. And she said she felt like she touched this stranger, and she'd picked him up by his chin. And someone's eyes don't change, do they, Sam?
No.
Someone's eyes don't change. And she said that she identified him by his eyes. She was looking. She knew that was a son.
Did she stay on the visit?
She did, yeah. She stayed on the visit.
Did he speak?
Not really. He kept looking at the floor. He had bits of I don't know if it was from a sheet bedding. He had bits of rags tied round his arms, and I'm sure there was something tied in his hair or something like that, and it was horrifying for her. He was underweight. He had lack of natural sunlight was doing something.
I told you, vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah.
In cellular confinement, and that in seg, people who don't go on exercise, and that it is a real problem. That in itself can destroy people. It destroys their mental health.
He still has it, Sam, to be honest. He's got this natural pasty grey colour now. It's constantly.
They all look like. When I said they all look, they do. The first time I went in prison, the first thing that struck me was how pale everyone was.
Yeah, how because of lack of
Yeah, of
natural
course. Yeah.
sunlight. Yeah, so he didn't really speak very much to my mum. Like, she said that she held his hand and he was just looking at the floor and he was
Did
telling...
he eat or drink? Did she try and get something for him or?
Yeah, like a savage. Yeah, like he was hungry, Sam. He was hungry. He was malnourished. He just ate and ate. She said, like, just like this savage that, and she didn't get a lot of sense out of him. Or she told me that what she seen was brokenness. He was broke, Sam. What they did to him in that prison, they broke him. They broke his spirit. They did a good job of it, to be honest. They did a really good job of breaking my brother's spirit.
Segregations can be very cool places.
Yeah.
I worked in one myself with some amazing people.
Yeah.
There were some absolute dogs worked in there. And, you know, at Strangeways, there were some, probably some of the best staff, which is what you need. Because, you know, it can be a very violent place and a dangerous place. But again, mixed in with them, there's some dogs. But you've never got to forget, you know, that there is decent people. Sometimes the decent people aren't strong characters. You know, they're not allowed to be themselves or whatever. It takes a lot to stand up or stand away from the crowd and be an individual.
Yeah, he's some of the malnourished. We knew where that was. We knew where it was coming from because we were trying to piece together what was going on in that prison, and as when he's got better and we've took him back we've took his memory back to Norwich. He says, I think my mental health was so unmanageable. When he was on the wing, he would be unlocked. Unlock him last. He's a pain. He thinks he's Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He's
people will mock as well and take the piss.
Yeah.
You see, quite definitely, you know, the state you're describing, both when I was in the private sector, which always gets a bad press, he'd have been in healthcare. We had a lad like that. And at Strangeways, he'd have been on healthcare. I have, sadly, come across maybe half a dozen religious people who have been in a bad place.
Yeah.
They sort of turn to the religion and it's scary shit.
Yeah.
You know, when people... We had one lad who covered his cell top to bottom, which the governor weren't happy about in scriptures. And the head chaplain, Henry, said that is all legit stuff. He didn't even have a Bible in his room. It was just verse after verse. Because he said to us, do you ever be taking stuff off him? No, he ain't got a Bible, that lad. I said, well, how's he doing all this? With just scripture, and it's scary. And they start talking like some possessed demon.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, has your mother ever visited him after that? That weren't her lasting experience, was it?
No, it wasn't her last experience, but there had to be a big gap because
Understandably.
to go back to
How was she when she came back home?
I don't think she'd come out the same woman. She went in my mum. A piece of her stayed in there with him. It did. It's yeah. It did. It stayed in there.
Do you know what? We're going to leave it there. We've got a lot more to talk about. We're going to come back and see this lass and other people, I believe.
Yeah, we're going to get...
I'd like to get Clara and Sherry together for a chat. I think that'll be quite enlightening. There's lots of things to talk about, lots of things we haven't covered, lots of things hopefully I can help you with that you don't understand, and other people. We'll leave it there, yeah?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much, Sam.
No, you're welcome. I'll see thee.